In everyone's life, the knock of sorrow is inevitable. When sorrow comes, rarely does someone manage to rise above it, while the rest are shaken by it. Sometimes this sorrow becomes so overwhelming that everything in life appears pale before it. Often, it seems as mountainous as a needle. In reality, when there is a lack of energy in the mind, the impact of sorrow is deep, and when the mind is filled with energy, the form of sorrow becomes small. We all wish for our lives to be filled with joy, and we continuously strive to attain that joy. However, it doesn't always happen. Along with joy, some form of sorrow always finds its way into our lives. It's not that sorrow is exclusive to the poor, it comes to the rich as well. However, the nature of sorrow changes for both. Yes, some people often turn small sorrows into significant troubles. Just as joy comes into everyone's life, so does sorrow. Joy and sorrow are like shadows to each other, always accompanying one another. They cannot be separated. If they cannot be separated, then how can one rise above sorrow alone? We will explore all of this, but first, let's understand why sorrow occurs through a story. So quickly write Namo Buddhaya in the comments and make sure to subscribe to our channel. Once, Mahatma Buddha was giving a lecture in a village. Concluding his speech, he said, "The cause of human suffering is binding oneself to someone. Wherever there is attachment, there is bondage, and there, suffering arises on its own. Therefore, understand your attachments and make an effort to break free from them." After that, he blessed everyone and returned to his ashram. The next day, a person came to meet him. Bowing down in reverence, he said, "Mahatmaji, I heard your teachings yesterday. Your words have touched my heart. I have released myself from all my attachments and renounced the illusions of desire. Now, I wish to take refuge in your teachings." Upon hearing the man's words, Buddha smiled and spoke gently. "Tell me in detail, my child, which bonds have you broken, and whose attachment have you renounced?" The man replied, "In my home, I have elderly parents and a wife. I also have a small child. My wife is often unwell, and seeing her suffering, I used to constantly worry that if she were to pass away, her pain would end. Because of her condition, I remained deeply distressed. However, when I heard your teachings yesterday, I realized that my family ties were the very cause of my sorrows. If I continue to be entangled in these relationships, I will never understand the truth. Therefore, I have left my home behind and come to seek refuge in you." The Buddha asked, "Have you really freed yourself from all bondage? Look carefully. Are there any attachments behind you?" The man replied, "No, Lord. I have left all aspects of my life behind and now want to move forward." Buddha said, "If it is so, then it is okay. Today, you stay here in the ashram. Tomorrow, I will tell you what you have to do." The Buddha signaled to one of his disciples, who took the man to the guest room of the ashram. The man keenly followed the activities of the ashram, was pleased and constantly expressed gratitude for his good fortune. The next day, the Buddha assigned the man a task and said, "You must go to the eastern direction. There you will find a village. Just outside the village lives a spiritual woman. She will give you an item. Bring it back to me." The man set off towards the east. It was a very hot day, and soon he became drenched in sweat. He also began to feel thirsty. He thought to himself that if he had been home right now, then he does not have to endure this sweating in summer. After walking some distance, he started feeling hungry. However, the path was deserted and barren. There were no trees around, no pond or lake was visible. He then started thinking, "If I were at home at this time, I would be enjoying the delicious food prepared by my wife. I don't know why the Buddha sent me so far in this scorching heat." After walking for quite some time, the person reached the village. Just outside the village there was a house. He approached the door and knocked softly. The door was opened by a nun with a radiant face. The person was mesmerized upon seeing her. Smiling, the nun greeted him. I know that Buddha has sent you. Please come inside. The man entered the house. Following the nun's instructions, he washed his hands and face with water and sat on a mat. The nun placed a plate of food in front of him. He started eating quickly. Suddenly, his gaze fell on the nun's feet. They were remarkably beautiful. He couldn't take his eyes off them. The nun noticed his distraction and said, "Once a person finds a place at the feet of Buddha, there is no need for them to seek refuge elsewhere." Hearing the nun's words, the man felt embarrassed. He lowered his eyes and quietly continued eating. After finishing the meal, the nun said, "You have come from a long way. You must be tired. Lie down on this mat. I will fan you." The man was indeed exhausted. He lay down on the mat and closed his eyes. The nun began to fan him. Despite lying down, the man couldn't find peace. Slowly, he opened his eyelids and stealthily looked at the nun. He thought to himself, "This woman is so beautiful. Her voice is enchanting. If she were my wife, my life would become heaven." Sadika understood what was in his mind. He said, "There is nothing in the body. It is just a mixture of meat, marrow, and bones. The person who becomes free from its attraction attains the truth." Hearing this, the person became worried. He got up from the mat and said, "Now I must go to Buddha. Please give me the items he mentioned." Sadika replied smilingly, "The work for which the Buddha had sent you has been completed." That person did not understand the meaning of what Sadika said. He walked towards the door. Reaching the door, he stopped for a moment, turned back and said, "Are you omniscient? How did you understand my mind?" The woman replied smilingly, "By the grace of Buddha, I have risen above attachment and illusion. Therefore, I remain unaffected by emotions and can understand the thoughts arising in someone's mind by looking at his face." Hearing her words, the man once again felt embarrassed and started wondering what the woman who truly respected him would be thinking about him. After this, he turned back towards Buddha's ashram. Upon reaching the ashram, the person fell at the feet of Buddha and said, "Great soul, forgive me. I am a great sinner." Upon hearing this, Buddha smiled and said, "I sent you to Sadika so that you could see yourself. Now tell me, have you truly renounced attachment and bondage?" The man remained silent. He stood quietly with lowered eyes. Buddha said, "By renouncing external bondage and attachment, we do not become free from bondage. In reality, bondage and attachment exist within us. You left your family and thought you had become free from bondage. But as soon as you got an opportunity, the attachment within you reawakened, and that is why today you consider yourself a sinner." "Forgive me, Lord." The man folded his hands. Then he spoke slowly. "You are right. I only wanted to escape from my wife. She is very ill, and we have not been able to establish any relationship for a year. I also do not earn much. Therefore, I am not fulfilling my family responsibilities properly. Perhaps that is why I wanted to escape from my family. But now I understand that my family is my truth, and fulfilling its responsibilities is the real duty." Buddha said, "Whatever I say is based on my own experience. People hear my words, but they interpret them according to their self-interest. That's why they seek attachment, illusion, desire, craving, inclination, and anger externally, while they exist within us. We start developing various desires by looking at others. Desire gives rise to attachment. Attachment gives rise to inclination, and when inclination is not fulfilled, anger arises. All these are interconnected. We often hold others responsible for our anger, while the source of anger is within us. For anger to arise, we must have the desire for it. If you wish, anger will come. If you wish, it won't come. Similarly, bonds are not external. They are within our minds. We become bound to someone through the mind, and it is because of the mind that we experience suffering. But the person who penetrates the depth of these things becomes forever free from suffering. Friends, we hope you enjoyed this story of Buddha. If you're interested in Buddha's stories, you can subscribe to our channel.